Welcome, folks, to another installment of the Wave It Fair podcast. Um, Today is October 29th, 2024, which means that the Yankees are gasping for air against the Freddie Freeman led Dodgers. And kind of like to see it happen, but right now the Yanks are up. So we'll see how far that goes. Tonight, though, we're going to be having a little discussion about the characters of baseball that we found uh, amusing or interesting. So, my name's Greco, and I'm here for it.
So I'll go next. My name is Matt. I like talking about this topic, and we just hit the 20th anniversary of the 2004 World Champion Red Sox, who reversed the curse. There are plenty of characters on that team, uh,
Bunch
and
of
I'm going to
idiots.
touch on those tonight.
And I'm Quinn Rolo, baseball fan, but even more specifically Red Sox fan, as I've alluded to many times before, thanks to my dad, and so much, many of, if not all, the characters of the game that I will mention will be Red Sox related. But I'll certainly chime in on some of the other characters of the game that my baseball brethren here will mention throughout this episode. But I will get perhaps most excited or animated talking about these Sox characters, particularly from those 3 and 4 games, because sadly nowadays the Red Sox are woefully devoid of character, which just makes me very.
Good, you deserve to be sad.
How dare you? What
All
doesn't
right.
make me sad is the Yankees, gasping for air. I can say that.
Yeah, well, looks like the Dodgers may be making a little bit of a push here.
It would be hilarious if the Yankees finally showed some life in the game, and then the Dodgers still come back and rip our hearts out. I
Isn't
mean,
that what already happened? I mean, we're getting pretty close to hot ripping
uh,
outage right now, aren't we?
it happened in Game 1 already, thanks to Freddie Freeman, and who knows? It may happen in this game again for the whole series.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Taylor, you want to start us up?
Mm.
Sure. Um, so the first character I think of, and I don't know why I thought of it first. Maybe part of the reason is because he's gone. Is Jerry Remy. Um, you know, one of the reasons why uh, over the last few years that I'm so disgusted with the Red Sox is because I think their broadcast blows, for one thing. Um, and, losing Jerry Remy was a part of that. Losing Eck was a part of that. Um, they made, I like, analysts that, aren't afraid to tell it like it is and acknowledge mistakes and um, say how they feel. And neither one of those guys, either Eck or Remy, were afraid to do that. Now everybody's afraid to do that because um, John Henry owns the team and they own NESN. So, I liked Remy, because um, he wasn't afraid to, do the negative or the positive.
He and Eck were like grandfathered in, and so even after John Henry bought
Yep.
Nesson, it sort of felt like they still had a certain kind of imperviousness to their broadcasting, where they were just like, "Hey, we're still gonna call people out if we see bad plays or questionable plays. We're not just gonna sugarcoat everything. What are you gonna do?"
Yep.
And that was nice because yeah, you're right. Everyone else, and so maybe you might be hitting on something here. Matt, that perhaps the personality-less Red Sox has trickled down from the broadcast, where I think part of the job of the color commentator is to help infuse some of these baseball players with some character and color, right? Like talk about some of the stuff, and certainly play-by-play man might be able to do that to a certain extent too. That kind of in between stuff that you hear about in the clubhouse, or that they may see in the clubhouse, they maybe bring it a little bit to the broadcast, and certainly some of that might shine through regardless from the players, but I mean, help us get to know some of the kind of idiosyncrasies or quirks about some of these guys, and that just I don't know adds flavor to the game.
It he noticed things that I don't. The thing I want from an analyst is he notices things, and he looks at baseball's a situational game, so I don't always think about like what's coming next. Jerry Remy could do that. I'll be honest. With all this shit with his son, that bothered me.
Mhm.
But in terms of baseball, I really, that the game was better. Watching the game was better with him there and with Eck too.
Mm-hmm. Actually, this is a question for Greco, because you have Eck, one of the a Hall of Fame pitcher,
Mhm.
great pitcher, and then you got Jerry Remy, kind of run of the mill, serviceable second baseman, middle infielder.
Yep.
Who is in a better position? Would you consider someone to be in a better position to be a color commentator, a pitcher or infielder, to be able to kind of
You're
speak to
asking
that?
you're asking an infielder, particularly a middle infielder.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that I was going to say when Taylor was bringing up,
Yeah.
situation, pitchers, I wouldn't say, are worried about, how they're gonna, get that cut, or you know where I'm going to play against this batter if the ball's inside, or if it's off speed, what I'm looking at, right? Middle infielders are constantly I would say somebody who's adept at being able to talk about the game in this different situations. I would expect a middle infielder to be one of them, but I would also expect a catcher to be number one. And I don't think that's a surprise that majority of coaches and managers are catchers
Mm.
just because of that fact.
Yep.
They're already coaches and managers on the field. And I would say number two is the middle infielders. So yeah, no, I'm sprinkling some personality, and you're good. And I'll tell you what, and maybe it's because of the time period, but when I think about the Red Sox broadcasts, I think about Orsillo and Remy as probably being one of
Mhm.
the better tandems because they could play off each other. I remember, I don't even know what game it was, but I remember they saw something in the stands and were belly laughing, like
Yeah.
to the point where they couldn't even speak.
Was it
And
when they threw the pizza?
Yeah, I
When
was
they
just
saw
thinking
someone
that.
throw the pizza?
I don't remember, but it's so funny and it's infectious because
It
they're
is.
trying
It
to
is.
commentate and get to the game, and you can hear Rosillo going, oh, ball one, and then like mute, and you can tell they're just muting their mics
Yeah. Yeah.
and they can't breathe. They're laughing so hard.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff I love. I respect, you know, the voices of franchises. You know, in my heyday with my A's, I used to just love listening to Glenn Kuiper and Ray Fosse.
Mm.
The stories they could tell and how they'd handle like trivia in between innings and break each other's balls and fantastic. I mean, but then you think of like a Vin Scully,
Right.
right? And
Or John Sterling for the Yankees.
yeah,
The Yankees
I
win.
I will tell you that I don't think there is something, and I guess this is actually kind of my point. I think the voices of the franchise is so important because I think I would like the Yankees a hell of a lot more if, you know, don't you know Robinson Cano? If it wasn't for that crap,
I think my least favorite was Enema
Flamingo,
Primera.
oh, just you're not who the Grandy man can enough, dude.
No.
You're not that clever. In that cackling lady that he's got with him.
Yeah, Waldman, I think was her
Yeah,
name. Yeah, yeah,
Susan
yeah.
Waldman. When,
Yeah.
when Clemens showed up
Mm.
Oh,
and made that appearance in the press box or
That was
whatever
pretty
it was,
embarrassing.
and she was like, "Of all the dramatic things I have ever
Uh-huh.
seen,"
Yeah.
like, come on. But for the Yankees fans, that that craziness is probably what they like. I hate them. Um, you know, the Seattle Mariners broadcast
Mm.
puts me to sleep. But I expect that from the Northwest.
Well,
It's
yeah, it's just all kind of rainy all the time, so you're always feeling
right,
kind of like you want to take a nap.
right. But
well, they used to have
specifically
this
for
guy
Remy,
named Dave Niehaus.
yeah,
Uh,
Niehaus, yeah,
he was a character.
yeah, he wasn't bad. But
Um,
I remember they used to split the game in half. It would be a new broadcast team,
yeah,
and
Mm.
if that second team was that sleepy one bringing up the rear,
yeah.
and you're out. But I'll tell you what, Remy was a character.
Mm-hmm.
Remy was one of those guys that you could listen to and you could feel like, I'm just watching a game with him in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated that. He was just
Yep.
one of the guys, you know. Um, I dated I don't know if it was like a second niece or something of his for a little while. I never got to meet the guy, but um, he probably would kill me at this point after. Um, but you know, from all intents and purposes, I heard he was a pretty decent guy personally too.
Mm.
So
Yeah, the chemistry he and Don Orsillo, and I think uh, it's certainly not necessary that you're from the area that you're calling games about, but I think that added to the mix that Don was a local guy.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that really infused this sense of like, just kind of added passion to the call that you know, just kind of added to the rapport because that's another thing too. Baseball more than any other sport is, I mean, like the best announcers establish a rapport with their crowd
Yeah.
because there's so many games. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't figure out a way to like find these fun moments and
Mhm.
like chuckle and be able to tell stories and kind of shoot the shit and make it feel like you're just kind of watching a game with friends, then yeah, it might end up being a slog to watch some of these games.
Right. I'll tell you what. I remember the glee that he had, and I
Mm.
don't remember what year it was. Taylor, you may remember this, but Nomar Garcia's birthday, my man had a game where he went off, and I think he hit 4 home runs, 3 home runs,
Ooh,
maybe.
he
And
had like
but
a 10 RBI game one time.
it was
That's
nuts.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was nuts. And for him to hearing Remy just marveling, going out of his like laughing out of his shoes, being like, "That's incredible! I can't believe this guy," or doubting, he's not going to do this again, and then crack, and he's like,
Hmm.
"You got to be kidding me! That's fantastic! That
Yep.
that I love that informal. I can be whoever you want. I don't know in this climate whether or not you could have another Remy
Yeah. And he worked well with Sean McDonough too.
McDonough.
Mm.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yep.
Um, you know, and Sean McDonough's a local. Well, he grew up in my town, the
Mm.
town I grew up in, and he worked well with him. And when I first started watching him, he was with Ned Martin. So
Because Remy goes all the way back to what? Was it like late 80s? Was it
Yeah.
87,
Yep.
88, something like that?
Yep.
Mm.
He was doing games in Ben Martin. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's what I like about him. And we talked about Sterling and Susan Waldman. When I watched the Yankees growing up in my grandparents' house in Jersey, like they used to have Phil Rizzuto and Bill White.
Scooter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you listen to those games, like, well, if you the Bucky Dent home run, that's Bill White calling that home run.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think he became, I don't know, he was either the commissioner of the National League or one of the, maybe the American League.
Hmm.
He became commissioner of the one of those, either the American or National League. I can't remember which.
Oh, and just for context, that game I was talking about was Nomar's
Mm.
29th birthday in '02. He went yard 3 times.
Oh, two. The last year maybe that he, I don't know, uh played with a certain amount of ease, if he ever did. I don't know. He always seemed to probably be a somewhat high-strung guy. Talk about character. He certainly packed a lot of character into his um batting box
He was a very ritualistic guy. I
routine.
will
Yeah,
tell you what, Nomar's a conversation for another day
yeah, yeah.
because there's some vitriol with me and how the Red Sox, particularly the fans, viewed Nomar post his career. So
Mm.
yeah, well let's keep to the characters because
We'll table Nomar for now.
yeah, because that could get violent.
Uh, well, I think, uh, as far as the Red Sox go, Remy was, added nice character in his color commentary for all those games for so many years, including those iconic years in 2003 and 2004, which
Hmm.
are chronicled beautifully in the new Netflix documentary, The Comeback. Highly recommend it. 3 episodes, about 3 hours, total. Uh, what I what I really loved about it is that it does show you a good amount of 2003, because I think that's important context for why
Yeah.
Oh
2004
yeah.
felt extra special. The fact that we lost to the Yankees in Game 7 on a walk-off in extras is critical to understanding how high stakes 2004 was, not just because of the 86 years, but because of just last year. We got our hearts ripped out by the Yankees again. And um, one of the elements to those two teams that made them so likable, um, that the series I think does a nice job of highlighting, is a guy who may have just been like all character. He had some talent, obviously, to be in the majors. He got some, but he really seemed to be the biggest element he brought to the team, was character, and that was Kevin Millar.
Yeah.
Kevin Millar, they, and I remembered this like it was one of those things that I had memory hold, but as it was brought up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that we basically poached him as he was on his way to Japan. Like he was basically like Florida had kind of released or like had set up some sort of arrangement where he was going to be go playing for Japan, and the Red Sox kind of swooped in, and it was one of those like unwritten rule things that Theo, as a new GM, I guess, uh, was kind of like looked down upon for doing, because it was kind of like a gentleman's agreement, I guess, that Milan was going to go play in Japan, and the Red Sox said, "No, you're not going to play with us." and Millar, he was just a freaking goofball, and but a goofball in a way that added to the team's looseness, not in a way that made you want to smack him. A few people want to smack him. It seemed like Terry Francona may have wanted to here and there, but it was largely a positive effect. And I think part of that was because he knew his role. I'm a big believer in that a lack of self awareness is one of the like worst attributes a person can have. And when, Kevin Millar is talking heads in this documentary, and then also just how he presented even at the time, he just seemed like a he just seemed like a good old boy, happy to be playing baseball and not taking himself too seriously. Like able to laugh at himself. And I think that was really important for the team, which felt just all the weight of expectation and like, when are you going to break this curse? Like everyone was feeling it. Most notably, the best players on the team, like Pedro, Manny, and Omar. And it just felt like Millar's character, his whole, he was the one who in 2003 led the initiative to like have them all shave their heads going into the Yankee series, and after they beat the A's. Sorry. And then in '04, Millar was the one who, after we're down 3-0, was like, "Hey, everyone, let's take a shot," and and kind of made it a thing. For better or worse, it at least added to the sort of sense of camaraderie in the group of like, let's stay loose, let's just attack this game one at a time. And he, of course, had the iconic, "Don't let us win game 4. Don't
Mhm.
let us win this one," because then we got Pedro, then we got Schill, and then anything happens in game 7.
Yeah.
And Shaughnessy, uh, um, he's one of the guys that's talking in this documentary. He's talking, and he kind of sounds almost exasperated because one of the clips is Millar saying that to him in like a pregame interview, and Shaughnessy was like, "Millar was going around saying that to everyone." He just wanted to shut up about it, uh, um, and I feel like, if in a different context, it may have come across as insufferable. I could see potentially, but in the context of that clubhouse, I think it was really crucial.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. There's a place for those guys, and I think of
Mm,
like the early 2000s through even the middle of the 2010s, where you had guys like Nick Swisher,
mm,
who, I mean, talk about just smiling all the time, always having fun. The Sean Casey's,
yes.
the guys with the nickname the Mayor, right? I mean, then you had Johnny Damon, who
Mm.
before going to you boys when he was in Oakland used to ride a longboard to the games.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, him, Giambi, um, he's freaking Tejada were all famous for racing um, RC cars during BP at the Coliseum instead of doing doing their warm ups and stretching, right? Those type of guys though who can kind of take that levity and change the locker room. And I mean, the Red Sox and the A's actually shared some of those guys, some of those
Mm,
character guys. And I know that's not part of Moneyball, but I'll tell you what, there was something about it that Billy Bean absolutely liked
Absolutely.
because there wouldn't have been the Johnny Gomes who kept
mm,
on coming back to Oakland. And then I don't think there's any surprise that after what happened with the Boston bomb, the marathon bombings, and that magical season you had, mid-season, one of your pickups was Gomes, and he
mm,
became that character guy for you folks, and that rally cry that no matter
mm.
what happened, he was going to be hanging that 617 jersey in the freaking dugout and cheering you on. That's what he did. The Josh Reddicks that we got from you guys,
Yeah.
who ended up being the guy who would go up to bat listening to Careless Whisper, famously, reenacting the thong that Giambi used to wear and bringing out championship belts from WWE. I mean,
Right.
those character guys bring a levity to the team,
Mm.
especially in times that you need it.
Well, you think too, we all remember the Dave Roberts steal. That's what everybody talks about. But it was Millar that drew the walk,
Mhm.
got him on base. And, somehow nobody remembers that Bill Miller got the fucking hit.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
oh yeah,
Hey,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
like, you know, um, Bill Miller was a quiet guy. But the other thing I remember about Bill Miller, I know I'm getting off topic here, but he hit that home run that basically turned around their entire season
Yep,
off
yep.
of Rivera.
He was
Middle of
a
04.
pure hitter.
Yeah.
Getting him from the Cubs was probably one of the most unsung kind of transactions for you folks.
Most unassuming batting champion maybe ever, because it was either 03 or 04 where he won the batting title with like a 324 or 325 average. And I remember he was this close with Manny. It was him and Manny going back and forth with who had the highest batting average that season, and it ended up being Bill Miller. It's like, wow, could you pick a more just kind of unassuming guy than that to win?
He batted like eighth.
Yeah, yeah. In some, I mean, that tells you how stacked that lineup is, though.
Yeah.
But I mean, you think about it too. You picked up Mankiewicz as a defensive replacement.
Yeah.
But that was a high contact, high batting average kind of guy too in Minnesota. So, but no, those character guys are the ones who can kind of cut through the tension. You think about the Hunter Pences, the Eric Burns,
Yeah.
The guys who will run through a wall for you without any question. And they may not be the most toolsy guys, but they have the heart. And I'll tell you that those are the kind of guys you want to go to bat with.
Yep.
I think though I'm kind of workshopping a theory, workshopping a take. So you guys might have to either tell me I'm 100% wrong. Greco, you would know better than better than me, having been in clubhouses to a certain extent. Um I think the like quirky guys or the guys who try to bring the energy or the fun, that they have to hit the right note, and they have to have enough buy-in from the clubhouse. Otherwise, I could imagine it's going to fall flat and come across as kind of obnoxious. And I'm thinking just someone that kind of is standing out in present day is Tristan Cassis for the Sox, who seems to have some talent, seems to be a good hitter, competent first baseman, which is nice for a change since the Red Sox were like allergic to competent first baseman for the last few seasons. But he does these things and has this way about him that just makes me want to punch him in the face. And it almost feels like he hasn't earned yet the time in the big leagues, maybe, to like have the sort of flaky kind of attitude that he has, where it might be considered charming if he had already put his time in and he's already kind of paid his dues to a certain extent. But it comes across more as just like, what have you done? Like, it's just sort of acting some of the odd ways that you are. And like, there's like some sort of calculation there around like what status a guy needs to have and or what talent he needs to have to get away with being that like kind of quirky character guy.
Yeah, I think it depends on the dynamics of the clubhouse. To be honest with you, I mean, I can tell you a non-professional baseball example, but I'll try to stick to professional baseball examples. Yeah, you think about a guy like Papelbon, who could easily rub anybody the wrong way, but in the Red Sox uniform was considered kind of a good clubhouse kind of guy. After a win, would get into his underwear and put on the goggles and dance on the pitcher's mound to shipping up to Boston and be that guy. But that same kind of fire in Washington is a fist fight with your teammates.
Yeah, led to like a strangling almost.
Yeah, with him and Harper.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And but that is probably not something uncommon to what he would do, back then. You think about like the Nasty Boys, right? Back with the with the Phillies back in the day, right? Dibble and those guys. I
Myers,
mean, what's
Charlton,
that?
Myers and Charlton. Yeah.
Yeah, any of those guys on another team in that role may not have had that type of success. The non-professional example that I can give you, um, you know, this year, my team that I manage, I've only been managing for about 2 years. We've had a pretty down dugout,
Mm.
and this past year, I caught some of the guys that weren't good teammates that I thought. And I brought on some guys and some guys that I took risks on from other guys who had a bad reputation in the league. But I'll tell you what, on our team, they were
Mm.
phenomenal. They
Interesting.
were the one dude was like, you know what, I haven't had this much fun playing baseball since I was a little. And his attitude went from a guy who would just kind of isolate himself from the rest of the team for years. And he's played on a number of teams. He bounced around. But I took him because I thought he was talented and I thought I could get to him. And now he's a clubhouse guy. He spent more time as a catcher working with my pitchers and their mechanics than I ever saw. And he was one of the best teammates we had. Phenomenal. You change the atmosphere for a player and they fit that role, right? It's almost like a society. There
Mhm.
has to be that role. There can't be somebody, goofing around that's not going to pull their weight. But there can't be somebody goofing around when you're not one either,
Mhm.
right? So um, it's interesting. I mean, we're going to talk about some of those guys. That
I'm gonna take this opportunity to take another shot at the nerds though, who are doing their best to ruin baseball, but nerds can't quantify the impact
oh,
character has or the chemistry that occurs, like you alluded to, Greco, where yeah, this guy on this team didn't work, but he's gonna maybe work on this team.
yeah.
Yep.
But I don't think anybody can quantify that really, because I mean, think about it. You're both in the human services field. Try to
It's
quantify
not
somebody's personality
it's
and how
not
they fit in the team.
quantifiable. That's the thing. It's a feel thing, but
Right.
too many nerds want to dictate lineups and want to dictate rosters on who draws walks, who puts the ball in play, three true outcomes, as opposed to, well, yeah, like this guy might not have the greatest metrics that we need to fill the gaps, but he's got these intangibles that are
I
going to be
will
the
agree
perfect
with you.
fit here.
However, here's what I'm going to say. One, I brought up that I think it's bullshit because I think that also Billy Bean and my boys recognize that
Mm,
because we did have the Swishers that they love. We did have the Johnny Gomes who came and played with us 4 or 5 times and wasn't exactly the best player, right? He was a role player. We had the
mm,
Eric Burns. We had those type of guys. Even you think about some of the guys you don't even Bobby Crosby was a character,
mm.
right? I mean, some of these dudes were there because of their personalities, right? Now, that being said, I will make the argument that yeah, those geeks, can't quantify it, and that's why they don't. They
Mhm.
go with what they can control, and if you can get guys who, um, walk a lot or, hit a lot of, gaps and are decent at the plate and they're looking at all the attributes you want, you got to hope that maybe they are going to be good clubhouse guys, right? I'll tell you that there's players that have been cut that were not good clubhouse guys that were cut by geeks because they were toxic to the clubhouse. So, can you predict it? No. So you don't plan for it.
So I wanted to use an example from that '04 team. So, we had Cabrera as our shortstop, right? And he was a great character guy.
Mhm.
And Theo like brought in Renteria, you know, who just flopped here because
Mhm.
it's not it's different playing in Boston or New York. It's not the same. It just isn't. And he really couldn't handle it here.
Mm-mm.
Um, and so they don't quantify that either.
Mhm.
That it's different playing here and um, in New York and Philadelphia and those places. So, I was shocked when they got rid of him. I was like, why?
Particularly when they removed Nomar, who obviously in a lot of metrics ways that he was starting to get a little rundown in '04, like kind of injured a little bit more, but metrics wise, resume wise, better than Orlando Cabrera. But Orlando
Couldn't
Cabrera
handle playing here
fit
either.
fit that team.
He didn't like playing here either.
Yeah.
Mm,
We
And that
were,
was part of the reason why he got moved.
yeah.
right.
Um, Mookie Betts had that problem, too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh, it's different playing here.
Yeah. It is odd though that Theo would make that trade,
Yep.
but then just kind of let OCAB go and say, "Oh, well, let's bring in Renteria." And even though he always struck me, he didn't like. I mean, oh, but the vibe seemed to be with him that he was like he seemed to be almost kind of like sensitive in a way, where like maybe it was like too I don't know too hostile environment for him to thrive in.
All right. Well, think about it this way, right? So you're on the most important defensive position on the field, and the savior, who a lot of Red Sox fans think they would not have broken that curse had they not traded for her, is gone, and now you're the replacement. Regardless of what you've done with your career before, and winning championships prior to or having good success, following that up is not going to be an easy feat,
Mhm.
especially in a rabid and I'm sorry, you Red Sox fans are not really known to be the most subtle about your likes and dislikes.
Mhm.
Uh, hence the appearance shaming of Yankees players. But I'll tell you what, it's hard to play here.
Mhm.
It is. It's hard to play here. It's hard to play here because you have a lot of miserable fucks who immediately hate you the second you don't wear that uniform.
At least we're not as bad as Philly fans.
I don't think you're far away. I don't think you're quite Eagles fans, but
No.
I don't think you're far away.
Renteria is an interesting kind of contrast because he couldn't handle the pressure of being here, and yet he got the winning hit of
Yeah.
the World Series with the Marlins, and then
Yeah.
he was the MVP of one of the series with the Giants.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Right. So this is not a guy that wasn't talented.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You talk
He was an
about being
all-star.
put,
Yeah.
yeah, you talk about being put in a situation where you're replacing the guy that they shouldn't have lost. Right. That trade is universally thought of by the Red Sox fans as being the reason why the curse was broken.
It didn't play a big role, but it shook up the chemistry. Like
Yeah.
Cabrera was also a good defensive shortstop, and at that time,
Yeah.
I think better than Nomar because Nomar was just getting too erratic with his throws, and the injuries were kind of plaguing his ability to be as good defensively as he used to be. But but it was also just a chemistry shakeup. It's really neat. Um, and uh, as far as chemistry goes, too, I think that David Ortiz also obviously played a huge role in, I think, uh, he and Pedro seemed to have a really good rapport with each other.
Well, him,
Uh,
Pedro, and Manny.
and gosh, like I almost feel like I was like Manny. It seemed like he was almost off the reservation several times over those years. Like there's even one sequence in the documentary where Theo recounts Manny saying like, "You got to trade me," and then even at one point too, Poppy was talking about like, listen, it was a little less like I don't want to be here, and a little more I want to be played full time because he was platooning with Jeremy Giambi,
Mhm.
and he basically was like, play me or send me somewhere else where I can play full time, and and like and made the official like, yep, let's play him full time, and um and and it was Pedro who was pretty responsible in bringing Ortiz to the Red Sox. It was his clout and his relationship with him in the Dominican that basically said like you're doing what in Minnesota? They're just like you're barely like you want you to do what? Oh, I'll get you over to Boston. And I think Pedro's one of those interesting examples of someone who was really mercurial a lot of the time. Leo kind of came across maybe as prickly sometimes. Came across as certainly like a diva sometimes, and yet he still ultimately, and he also didn't, he kind of faded a bit towards the end of his Red Sox tenure, and he didn't end up being the like lockdown ace that we hung our hat on in the '04 season. It ended up being showing, but but Pedro is still, you know, revered in Boston because he got it. He still ultimately knew how to rise to the occasion here, and he also knew like his personality shined through. Like even if he didn't rise to every occasion on the field, he he would own it still. He would still talk to the media and he would joust with the media and he would show that personality too. And dare I say some vulnerability too? There's the classic when he
Yeah, they're
was
my
feeling
daddy.
really when he was feeling really down about the Yankees swatting him around late in '04. He called the Yankees my daddy. And talk about setting yourself up to get haunted like crazy at Yankee Stadium. But he kind of was, he wore his emotions on his sleeve for better or worse. Usually it was for better because I think that added to that kind of ferocity he had as a pitcher and that kind of competitiveness that he really needed, considering he was also, he was, on the smaller side as far as pitchers go, but he just played so much bigger than he was, um, and I think part of his bigness was also about his personality. Too.
Yeah, well, all of his starts were an event, right?
Absolutely, yes,
Um, you when he pitched, it was an event,
yep,
and you know, I know I look forward to every time he pitched, every time, and
hmm
just because, um, he, like you said, when he was ferocious and, um, he competed no matter what. You look at that game, in 2003, he really competed that game, but because the Yankees had such a tough lineup and because they had seen him so many times before, they knew what to look for.
hmm
And then the other thing is, he really changed the whole way the Red Sox did business. They started to build their team around pitching,
Mhm.
not around hitting the left field wall.
hmm
So that was a big part of it too. And he started all that.
Oh yeah,
Pedro's one of those guys that I think had he um, been around during social media,
mm,
probably would have transcended baseball pretty well, right?
yeah,
Um, I think it's funny, and I was thinking about this the other night. Talk about the post game um, broadcast team or Fox, and you have A Rod, you
hmm
have Jeter, you have Pop,
yep,
you have those rivalries that and those people became the faces. If I were to ask you, in 20 years from now, who's sitting at the desk that's playing there today?
The warm cup of milk known as Mike Trout, is he going to be there?
No, he doesn't have that. I'll tell you. So my two guesses are Rizzo
You can see
and Vaughn.
that. Mm.
Anthony Rizzo?
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah,
He's
I'm
got a
trying.
certain smirk that would play well as a commentator.
Yeah, no, he's a personality guy,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. But sorry, I didn't mean to take that. That was supposed to be, discussing with Pedro. Um, I think that his broadcast abilities, him on the MLB network,
Mm.
him with the TBS crew, um, I think he's done well there, and I think that has a lot to do with what he brought to the field. He was one of those guys that you had to respect what he was going to do. He was exciting to watch play, and he was fun to compete against because he was hard to hit.
And he knew, and this is another thing too that may end up having to be another episode too, is does anyone pitch inside anymore? Because that was refreshing too to watch some of these clips of 20 years ago. These pitchers wanted to take the plate back from these hitters that were encroaching on their plate and they would throw inside.
All those steroid users, you had to keep them inside, otherwise they're going to turn on you
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
while they're not in the Hall of Fame.
But Pedro, like, I mean, he uh, uh, you know, pointing at Posada's head, just some of the threats that he would make is bold, and that's an example of something that probably wouldn't fly in today's baseball, unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned. Like, there's something about sports hate. It's not healthy. It's not healthy in the real world to carry around in your heart. That ultimately just does you a disservice and wears on your own health and well-being. But sports hate, I mean, it adds juice to what you're watching when there's
It's
good, healthy sports hate.
Yeah, it's different,
Mm.
right? It's different, right? It's not like um, the guys who I feel like this year there was more players talking about, hey, let's meet outside after the game,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Where that wasn't necessarily the case in some of these, right? Back in the day, it was kind of like we hate you because we want to win.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a personal thing. Um, but speaking of, I mean, talk about one of the things that makes some of these folks um, memorable is because of their winning, because of their postseason record, because of their ability to win when it means something, right? I mean, those are Hall of Fame makers. And I'll tell you what, I'm not watching it, but I did see Otani's name come up with a man on second with one out, down by two, and do nothing with it.
It's funny. It's
Nothing.
almost he's been almost as much of a no-show as Aaron Judge has been.
That's what I'm saying. First ballot Hall of Famer. No.
It's uh it is interesting to see how players show up or don't in the biggest moments and to what extent they get dinged for that. Because in a weird way, unfortunately, there are some players who almost like I think about the inverse about, and I think we've touched on this before. Pitchers that immediately come to mind are like Andy Pettitte, Kurt Schilling, who I mean, you can't think of many pitchers above them that you'd want to take in a big game in the postseason. But because their regular seasons were always good, not not great. Neither of them ever won a Cy Young. Neither of them were ever really the best pitcher in their respective league any of the years that they pitched. But yeah, um, you feel really confident having either one of them pitch a big game in the postseason, and yet that doesn't seem to get weighted as much in their favor in consideration for Hall of Fame status. Uh,
Yeah.
Whereas Otani and Judge, they're on the trajectory. Certainly Otani. There's probably Judge too.
I,
And
I, I
again,
think
it
I
is.
think Judge is in because of his home runs.
Yeah,
Because he's the
yeah.
first clean guy to legitimately challenge Maris and do
Mm,
it.
hmm.
So I think that he's in. I think he's more in than Otani is. Um, I think that's 100%. I'll tell you what. You talk about those guys. Um, some of the less entertaining characters of the league, but some of the more interesting, are some of those OCD pitchers. When you talk about when somebody who I want to have on on a postseason roster as a pitcher. I mean, these guys didn't necessarily not have a good, I guess, regular season. But I mean, listen, Schilling's not in the Hall not because of his regular season, because my man was a Cy Young Award winner too, and the same with Pettit. Pettit and both of them would be in the Hall of Fame had it not been for the whispers and the bullshit that followed them. So I would disagree on that. But I'll
Hmm.
tell you what, you think about a guy like Greg Maddux,
Mm.
who, I mean, I think it was, and I don't remember the stat. I wish my brother was up. I'd text him because he'd tell me in a second. But there was some crazy stat where he didn't like get into a 3-1 count or 3-0 count with anybody for like years. Like it
Sheesh.
always at least a strike on somebody or two strikes on somebody. The guy was just a machine, and his pitches weren't hard. He used to throw pretty high, back in the day, but I mean, he was sitting at 85, but dotting every corner, making people look silly with off speed stuff, keeping them off balance. That may not be the most clubhouse guy, but I'll tell you what, that's an eccentric dude
Mm.
to be that cerebral and that intentional and have that amount of control is amazing. And that's what I think about too when you have a pure hitter like a Manny Ramirez.
Mm.
Or you think back to, you hear stories about like Ted Williams and
Mm.
how he could see the ball and, you know what was coming and where it was going before they had game film that they could sit there and watch reliably, right? Those are the kind of guys that I think about that maybe wouldn't be necessarily on our list,
Mm.
but are unique characters just because of their abilities were so cerebral.
Drop my phone there for a second.
Do that.
Uh, um,
Glad you're
well,
wearing pants.
yes, aren't we all? Uh, uh, so, I mean, the talent ultimately is what's going to bring us to watching these guys. But there is a tipping point where at some point you want to have something else to I don't know latch onto with some of these guys. Going back to my uh criticism of Mike Trout, who who the hell is he aside from actually, you know what? It's fitting that the only endorsement I can think of him being attached to is Subway because that food is bland as shit too, just like he is. So I think that and that's maybe a match made in heaven. But I mean, this is something that Judge, he's a freaking moose. So that ends up being like, oh geez, this guy, like what the hell is this guy about? He's unique. And he's a great player. Otani, he pitches exceptionally and hits exceptionally and runs exceptionally, aside from when he, subluxes the shoulder when he slides in the second. Uh, like that's unique. Uh, and I think I saw a stat the other day too that 12% of the entire country of Japan was tuning into the World Series. I think like game two or something like that.
That's how it always is. Yep.
And that's probably effective for him and to a certain
Oh yeah.
extent.
Yeah.
But obviously national pride plays into that. But he's he's interesting because of his talent.
All right.
Uh,
All right. All right. All right. Hold on.
oh, Greco can only take so much praise of Otani before he has to
No, no,
reject.
no, 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 no. I'm not doing that. I'm sticking up for Trout because I know that you think he's a wet blanket,
Mm.
but the eyeball test. And Taylor, I don't know how many times you've been able to actually watch Trout play, specifically when he's healthy, but
Yeah, that's been a problem
he's different.
for years now.
He's different when he goes back on a ball.
Yeah.
He's different when he swings the bat. It sounds different. He's different. He's an amazing player. Now you're talking about his personality. Have you ever seen an interview with him?
I
I
mean, none immediately come to mind. I can tell you that right
Okay.
now.
Can you think of any riveting, funny interviews that you've seen from Otani?
No,
Okay.
no.
What about hmm, let's see, another fantastic West Coast player. How about J Rod?
I have not seen a interview. Well, let me think. There's some ad I saw him. I think
Yeah,
it
he
was
does ads.
some kind of MLB ad.
Yeah, yeah, he does ads. What about who else did you bring up?
Um,
Right, you forgot. Listen,
Judge.
Judge. Oh yeah, whatever. Judge. The reason why you care about Judge is because he's on the Yankees and you don't like his face. Listen,
I don't mind Judge. I don't mind Judge. I
the
take him any day.
West Coast players are always gonna have that that familiarity issue
Mhm.
with the people on the East Coast. It's just the game started at 10 o'clock at night, and you're not gonna sit down and watch an Angels freaking A's game
Nope.
that's gonna go until 1:30 in the morning. You're just not, right? Not happening. You never heard of John Lackey until he became a Red Sox, right?
Well, I heard of John Lackey. He has a distinctly punchable face. And, he did win the World Series in 2002
With the Angels
with the Angels.
With the
as a
Angels, yeah,
rookie.
yeah, yeah, as a rookie, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But I'll tell you what, these are the guys that um, before you shit on them, do a little bit of more eyeball test. And I'll tell you what, if Trout does get moved, you better hope his ass goes to Boston. Because I
Oh,
will tell you what,
I love it.
yeah, I'll tell you what, if he ends up going to like even Philly where he's from, or he gets on the Yankees, you think you just like him now. Whoa, wait until he's given a post-game interview after going yard on your ass.
Well,
Uh,
let me play to the crowd here then, since I know how much disdain you have for the Angels.
yeah.
Can I say that I have disdain for anyone who chooses to remain on the Angels, no matter how much they're paying you? Like, where's your competitive spirit? Why don't you go to a team that matters?
Yeah. Well, I think that's funny. I think that's funny because um, I think that there's, when we talked about Oakland leaving,
Mm.
right? Um, Matt Taylor brought up how he thinks that there should be some sort of loyalty from the team to the fans. And I'll tell you that if you're a guy like Mike Trout who's been promised a winning team and you have an ownership who has deep pockets and you're the 29th pick in the draft, but you're considered one of the best pure hitters in the game that we've seen since Mantle. Um, and you want to try to make that franchise a winning franchise, and you stick around because you're loyal to that and you're loyal to that fan base. That's the last person I'm going to shit on for trying to uplift the community that gave him an opportunity. Sorry, not
And
gonna.
Wow, that's a
you know, I
twist.
think, you just jogged my memory about that Angels team that won the World Series. And one of the players I loved on that team was Erstad.
Yeah, Erstad was a grinder.
I love that guy.
Eckstein, Erstad,
Yeah.
those guys in the middle.
I think he won a gold glove in the outfield and first base, I think.
Yeah.
Or I
Yeah.
he played two different
Him,
positions, and I know
yeah.
he won gold gloves.
Him, Salmon, Garrett Anderson,
Gloss.
Eckstein, Gloss. Those guys were.
It's boy loss.
Oh,
Yeah.
they had a phenomenal team, and they
Yeah.
had good character guys. I hated them, but all those guys were
First
phenomenal
of all, was
players.
the closer too, and K Rod
Yeah.
was a setup guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I hated them. I think they were the Anaheim Angels of Anaheim in California and 90210 Florida.
Yeah.
They were wherever the hell they were. But yeah, I dislike them, but it doesn't mean I don't respect them.
So we talk about other characters, maybe from another franchise.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
Go. Let's go.
So, as you guys mentioned, I had grandparents in New Jersey and Maryland, and one of I don't know if you guys have seen clips of Earl Weaver.
Yes.
Um,
So this is where you're talking about with the Orioles. All right.
he has some of the best clips, and he got he got kicked out of a game before it even started.
Ooh.
Weaver was fire.
Yeah, he got kicked out of games regularly, as regularly as anybody that's ever managed baseball. And I remember he forfeited a game one time because it was something with the conditions. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, some of his arguments are legendary. There's a couple of clips of him arguing with an umpire,
begging him to throw him out, right? Like, when you gonna throw me out? Just throw me out, right? Because he wanted to get thrown out, and then he started attacking his wife and his kids, and he was brutal.
Yeah.
He was classic. He was Pinella before Pinella.
Yeah. He,
Oh boy! Wow.
He thrived on conflict. He really did. And he was very humorous guy, I found, but he was a good manager.
Yeah.
And I kind of grew up watching him, and then there used to be a I don't know what you would call him back then, but he was kind of a super fan. His name was Wild Bill Hagee, and he did the Orioles like kind of chant. So if you guys ever seen, like, they would do this thing, they go, oh, then they are, like, I can't, he's the one that did that.
Okay.
So they used to see him. His name is Wild Bill Hagee. So I liked him. And then Rick Dempsey, who was a very underrated defensive catcher. But he also won the MVP of the last World Series the Orioles won. So he was a great, if you look him up during rain delays, you'll see some of what a kind of a character he was.
Rick Dempsey played on teams that Earl Weaver managed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. He was on that Dodgers team. I'm pretty sure that beat the A's in the World Series. I think he was a backup to maybe like Sosha or whoever got the Dodgers at that time. I'm pretty sure he was a backup. He was a great catcher.
So you brought up one guy, and I'm trying to make sure I get my story right on this, but I think wasn't and Taylor, I'm going to rely a little bit on you and your New York lore, and if not, I'll have to do a better job of researching. But Stengel was one of those guys
Oh yeah,
where he just couldn't seem to get out of his own way,
yeah,
but had some of the most legendary managing like opportunities for teams.
yep,
And I mean, he was right up there with character as far as Billy Martin was, uh,
yes,
but universally kind of frowned upon as maybe not the brightest bulb.
yeah. They looked at him as a clown.
Yeah,
Um, and but Billy Martin's strategies he got from Casey Stengel. A lot of the stuff that he implemented on his teams, he got from Casey Stengel.
yeah, some of that reckless abandon that he would manage
Yep.
with
Yep.
came from the Stengel era. Yeah.
Really highlights how old a game baseball is when you look up these guys that we're talking about and you see Casey Stengel, born in 1890.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm?
Because these
Yeah.
names, like, it's funny because all three of those names, Matt, that you've mentioned are names that I just feel like I've absorbed
Yeah,
from
but
the
you don't have
ether,
any context to it,
but I
right?
don't have like a relationship to them because obviously they weren't on the Red Sox, but like just being entrenched in kind of, baseball, just kind of generally speaking, and going to Cooperstown so many times and just kind of hear my dad kind of wax eloquent about it from time to time. Like hear these names, but I just don't know the details about them. So interesting.
I think if I remember correctly, one of the most famous Casey Stengel quotes that I remember was there's three things that can happen in baseball.
Mm.
You can win, you can lose, and it can rain.
Mm.
And that was it.
yeah,
It was just like that was like a post game interview with him about like, why his team isn't winning as well. And like he was almost like a word salad kind of guy to dodge questions at the end of games. And yeah.
Well, to hear him described like that, it calls to mind another all-time character in
Of
the
course.
history of baseball, Yogi Berra.
yeah. I was
Mhm.
thinking that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he won an MVP as a catcher.
He
Which is
did.
pretty unusual. Um, he might have even won more than one. Uh, but he was some player, and he didn't come back to the Yankee. Like after Steinbrenner fired him, I don't think he came back to the Yankees for like 25 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
He stayed away. Didn't he like have a little stint with the Dodgers for a little bit?
he might have, yeah. I mean, he managed the Mets.
He did manage the Mets for a while.
Um, he took over for Gil Hodges actually after Gil Hodges died, and he took the Mets to a World Series. I think it's still that Mets team that they played the A's, and that's still the team with the worst record to play in a World Series. They won like 82 games.
Hmm.
But yeah, he was a character.
Yeah.
If you have a fork in a road, take it.
Yep. Another one too. I pulled up some of his famous ones. Another one that I love is baseball is 90% mental. The other half is physical.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%. Yeah.
It got
Hey,
late
listen,
early.
yeah. It ain't over until the fat lady sings,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? I mean, he is famous for his quotes, and people don't even know where they came from, but they use them.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
A nickel ain't worth a dime anymore.
Yeah.
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 I'm
Yeah.
using that.
Yeah. Brilliant.
It's like
Absolutely
deja
brilliant.
vu all over again. There's another
Yes,
one that
I love
that's
that
like just
one.
like in the ether that like people reference all the time and talk about having an imprint on
No idea where it
like
came.
culture. And he was obviously a great player too. And
Mhm.
yet he might be arguably more remembered now for these
Yeah.
phrases.
But I mean, he was it 5 rings?
Ooh, let's see.
those were the times when the Yankees would win 5 in a row.
Every freaking year. Yeah.
Um, like, I think,
Oh wait, 10. I'm sorry, I said 5.
yeah,
I was only half right.
yeah.
My man has 10 World Series rings.
Aye, aye.
Broly, you disappeared on us.
Unreal. Oh,
Played in 75 World Series games.
Oh, I mean, I guess that makes sense because in those days, that's all you had was the World Series.
Yeah,
mm,
Um,
that was the best
so
of the two.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and he managed the Yankees. I want to say in the '60s too, but I'm not sure. Uh, but again, a catcher managing a team,
Yeah. Yep.
is a big part of it. I think it's interesting you say that, Quinn. Like you kind of like you hear these names, but you're not engulfed in it. And I think the reason I kind of drawn to the Orioles as my surrogate team. They're not obviously they're not my favorite, but
mm.
uh, when I was growing up, that was how they were the model franchise in baseball. They went to 6 World Series in 18 years and won 3 of them.
Yeah.
So, they were built around pitching, defense, and the 3-run homer. That was Oral Weaver's strategy. So, and they won a lot on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and I'm sorry. 3 MVPs
Yeah,
for Yogi.
catcher.
Yogi. Sheesh.
As a
Yeah.
catcher.
Yep. First perfect
What?
game in World Series history.
Yep.
Caught
Yep.
by him.
Really?
Yep.
Don Larson.
Yep.
How many people just know Yogi Berra from those Geico?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, my man was 5'7".
Mm.
You know, like not you think about a stereotypical catcher now, you're not getting anybody, you know, tiny anymore.
No.
You know?
Yeah, he was a
Pretty
fire.
crazy. Pretty crazy.
Trying to think who else I thought of. Who comes to mind right now? I don't know if you guys ever saw that Phillies team that made the World Series against Toronto. I don't know if you guys that
Yeah,
team.
Halliday.
This was like Kruk,
Yeah,
Derek Dalton,
yeah,
Dykstra.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mitch Williams.
Mhm.
That was a character team.
You
Oh, yeah.
know, John Kruk reminds me of
John
the
Daly.
fact. Well, that's the thing, is that baseball is one of those interesting sports where you certainly do not need to look terribly athletic to succeed in the sport,
Yeah.
depending on what position you're playing. And Kruk
I mean, think about
certainly did
Naylor,
not. Yeah.
Vogelback.
That was an interesting team, that Phillies team.
Yeah, it was.
David Wells is another one who was always a big fella.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, there's a collection of guys who I think we could certainly bring up. I know we're just over an hour, so we can go a little bit longer. We've been averaging about an hour and a half.
Yeah, Gregor, you
So
haven't offered any tributes yet
yeah,
to this
yeah.
conversation.
I was almost gonna say, this is maybe we continue with uh, almost like an East Coast kind of thing,
Mm.
right? We covered the Mets. We've talked about the Phillies. We've talked about the Red Sox. Obviously, we brought up a lot of Yankees guys and all that
Mhm.
stuff.
Orioles.
Orioles. So maybe there's a couple of these in in the holster, because I think that if we start bringing up other guys in here, we're extended. So one of the guys that I think about though with you folks specifically is Pedroia.
Mm.
This dude was a firecracker on the field. He was a character guy. My man did not have a clean jersey after the second inning, and any opportunity that he had to make a play in a ball, he was out there doing it. But he was a little eccentric. He was, the laser show stuff. He was an MVP. He was a critical part of your World Series in '07
Mm-hmm.
as a rookie, right? Or was it a second year?
Rookie of the year and led off
MVP
the
the
World
next.
Series with a dinger over the Green Monster the night. Yeah.
Talk about a guy who, um, and you guys would be able to kind of verify this for me, but I felt like he was kind of the mascot specifically for that '07 team, but for kind of a few teams after that, that he was the kind of guy that you could just all pile on his back. He was going to bring all the attention to him, and he was going to handle it with some form of ability, and the other guys can kind of just do their job.
Mm-hmm. Well, emblematic of that is that his rookie season, I remember he sucked for like the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
He was below the Mendoza line, like, and we had heard all about like, oh, this is our next prospect. He's coming up. He's finally ready for the big leagues, and they just kept putting him in there, and he kept not doing great. And he was starting to kind of test the patience, like, we need to maybe kind of get someone else in, and Tito, to his credit, him in there, had faith in him, and said he's getting his bearings. It'll pay off, and he was right. He rallied back and became Rookie of the Year, and then the very next year, I'm pretty sure it was '08, he ended up winning the MVP. It was actually, I think, kind of between that year. Him and Euclid were two of the big contenders that season, and it ended up being Detroit. But Pedroia was one of those that uh, I almost feel like I almost feel like he was the inverse of why Judge is so notable as a star. Judge is a moose, and so it's like, whoa, he's like extra big, and and he's also really good. Pedroia is someone who, like, he looked like the bat he was swinging was as tall as he was, and he had such a big swing for such a smaller dude.
Yeah.
Like, and like his swing looked like one that you'd want to tell him to choke up on the back. Like
Mhm.
he had this like larger swing that just didn't feel. It
He
felt
never got cheated.
it felt like unwieldy, yeah. But he made it work, obviously, um, and it kind of spoke to his confidence. This is a supremely confident person, and that confidence can run the line potentially in arrogance if you end up falling flat in your face. But he obviously had belief in himself, and it paid off. And like I think that did kind of infuse the team, particularly that '07 team, into being the wagon that it became. Because '04, as is documented in that documentary, teetered. The first half of that season, we were not doing well, and then we rallied. Whereas '07, we were just a freaking wagon the whole
Yeah.
season.
Mm-hmm. Well, JD Drew, I
Yeah.
mean, he was another guy that I think needed to have the attention taken off of him, and I
Yes.
think Pedroia helped.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
A little mouthy at the end of his career. Pedroia, I didn't love that.
Yeah.
But I always respected the way he played.
Mm.
I always did. I just found this character came to mind, and he is a character. Um, he played for the Red Sox in the late 60s. And then he went to their broadcast booth in the late 70s. And then he went to the White Sox booth for 30 years. You guys know the Hawk, right? Have you guys
Oh,
yeah.
Hawk Harrelson?
You can put it on the ball.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most hometown
Yeah.
announcer
Oh, yeah.
with Chicago.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta be kidding me. If they
Yeah.
lost the game, he was incredulous.
He went after umpires too.
He did. Yeah, this guy, he sucks. Yeah.
Hey, well, he sounds like the Tommy Heinsohn of baseball.
Yes. Yeah. But if you watch interviews with him, he's an interesting guy.
Mhm.
I forgot he played for the Red Sox.
I don't even think I knew that.
Yeah. He I can't remember if he played for the 67 team or the 6, I think he came the next year at 68, but he hit 40 home runs one year. And he also, I'm trying to think, I think he came like this close to playing on the PGA Tour.
No kidding.
You'll love this, Greco. He was the guy when Tony La Russa was with the White Sox. He was the guy that fired Tony La Russa. He's like, that's what I'm famous for in Chicago. I fired like the greatest manager ever.
Right. Yeah, the first time. He wasn't around to fire him the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So it was interesting. He was an interesting guy.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I felt like he was one of those announcers that I grew to appreciate more because he was so much a homer. And he annoyed the hell out of me. Watching those broadcasts when, Konerko would get up and the ball was clearly off the plate and they called it a ball. And, he's like, man. Or what they call it, a strike or whatever. He's chirping and, going after it. But I think that was also one of the guys who I respect now as actually a podcast host, who I didn't like then, was Brzezinski.
Yeah.
And I think that he and Hawk, I could see as best buddies. As far as that goes. What is going on with the Dodgers right now?
Yeah.
Gleyber Torres just launched a bomb. Now it's 10-4.
Yeah, that happened quick.
Yeah.
I saw Volpe got on. Right? Didn't he start the rally?
I didn't catch who had got on first, but I know that there was an infield hit where the Dodgers had the infield in and they tried throwing a guy out at home, but he was able to slide in. I didn't catch the name who it was that slid in, but Dodgers were going to hang around. Yankees were trying to maybe let them come back in it and choke, but
it is not easy to sweep. It's not easy to sweep. But talk about a storyline though. If the Dodgers can lose, and the Yankees become the first team to come back 3 games down, that would put a little wet blanket on the ALCS for you guys.
I wouldn't.
It'll never put a wet blanket on it for me.
To do it in the series, though, that's pretty
the Yankees will never live that down. Being the only team in history, it's been done in hockey, I think 4 times. It's never been done in the NBA.
Never been done otherwise in baseball except for that once, I think, right?
Listen, maybe I'm just trying to poke the bear and get a rise out
of it. If you listen, I was listening to Felger and Mass today, and there were these calls coming in bitching about Pat Mahomes and there are all these miserable people he's not as good as Brady, or like they're going to say he's as good as Brady when he ties him and all this other stuff. Like, who gives a shit if he does? Like, it doesn't take away what
Right.
Brady did.
This is your history. This is your history. Well, I'll tell you what, the games have evolved.
Mm.
You know, I mean, we were talking about, Barra. I mean, think about just even the equipment that they were
Yeah.
using back then. Just even
Barely any protection.
Yeah.
there was no such thing as a DH back then,
Oh.
right? There was no such thing as pizza boxes for bases. That this was a game that has evolved and changed, and I think in some ways that we have to look at those things different.
You got to create like a counter for, I know
How
I
many times did I
have.
see pizza boxes for bases?
Yes, how many times you crush the size of the bases now? And then
Yeah,
there can also be a counter for how many times I rag on the Yankees, subcategory want describe faces as being punchable, particularly those of the Yankees. Um, I got. Do we have anything from Matt yet, though? I'm trying to think. Is there any running theme yet? You're too diverse in your topics, Matt, to have like a crutch like I do that I lean on each episode.
For me,
Yeah, like what's your like running theme in each episode that we've had of this so far?
uh, well, if you gave me um like one player, one thing that I would bitch about more than it would be the current state of the Red Sox,
hmm
um,
hmm
Mhm.
and Clemens.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
talk
I
about
Oh
I
how
yeah,
would
yeah,
much I
yeah.
hate
I
Clemens
would
all
agree
You
with you
day.
on
hate
it.
Clemens. That's right.
Yeah,
That's what it
yeah,
is. You hate
yeah. That
Clemens.
fucking guy.
I'll talk all
Yeah,
day about that.
yeah, yeah.
There
And
it
maybe
is.
we should one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we should one day. Let you kind of vent. It'll be a little therapy session
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
for Mr. Taylor. Tell me how
sounds
that
good to
really
me.
makes. Yeah, yeah. Um, no, I think that um this game is full of characters, and you think about Clemens. The reason why I even liked the guy back in the day is because my mother's favorite player of all time um, was actually not a Red Sox, even though she was um, like borderline feverish about anything Red Sox, um, and that was Nolan Ryan. And I
Oh.
remember the amount of respect she had for Clemens when he first came up because of how much he mimicked the preparation that Nolan Ryan would do for him. Like, I remember specifically her talking about how Nolan Ryan would get a bucket of rice, push his hand all the way down to the bottom, and then pull it back out of the rice. And that was one of his ways of exercising his arm. And I guess Clemens would mimic that. And that was one of the things that I remember that actually gave me respect for Clemens because of that. Um, now, I hated the bastard because he always pitched against me,
Uh,
but never with the frothing of Mr. Matt Taylor.
you know what's a staggering piece of trivia that I only recently learned that the two of you may already be aware of, but that for as long a career as Nolan Ryan had, and for as dominant as he was for those 27 seasons, he never won a Cy Young.
Yeah,
Yep. Ever.
That's ridiculous to
Yeah.
me. I just saw because I was like, wait, is that something? Like I had to just confirm it because like I'm like, I think I heard that somewhere recently. And the closest he came was in 1973. He came second to Jim Palmer. And I'm like, really? Never at any other point. Like I'd almost want to like might be like a long-term project for me to like comb through and see what he was like season to season and see like who was actually better than him in every single one of those seasons. I mean, it just feels ridiculous to me. But my frame of reference for someone like Nolan Ryan talking about character, another whole element to the game that we haven't really talked much about that can sometimes be a character booster is when benches clearing brawls happen. And there's that classic scene of Nolan Ryan putting that guy who charged him out into a
Oh yeah, John
headlock and just
Valentin.
punching him in the face. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, you got Robin Ventura as well.
Mhm.
Robin Ventura.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and continue to pitch with a bloody mouth.
yeah.
um,
He, if you think back, I think one of the reasons he probably didn't win a Cy Young is because in those days, not only did he have a lot of wins, but he had a lot of losses too, because they would pitch complete games.
right, right. That makes
Like
sense.
I was just thinking about something. The last guy who won 30 games, Denny McLain. You guys know Denny McLain?
I know the name. I don't know a lot about it.
He he was the last guy to win 30 games, and like he got into gambling and racketeering and all that other shit, and went to jail for a few years. But then so that year they went to the World Series and they played the Cardinals, and the guy that won the World Series MVP that year was this guy Mickey Lolich, who beat Bob Gibson 3 times. And
Jeez.
I was looking at him one year. After that, he was in like I don't know, like maybe 70. Actually, he was second to Vida Blue in the Cy Young award one year, and he threw 376 innings.
It's insane.
Wow,
It really is
He
insane.
threw almost 400 innings,
that's ridiculous.
25 complete games.
It's nuts. We'll never see that again unless it's in Japanese baseball.
Likely fueled by whiskey and cigarettes too.
Probably. Yeah, probably. I mean, it's an amazing thing. But I mean, you see Nolan Ryan, and one of the things that kind of and I may be exaggerating this, so forgive me if I am. But he threw out a first pitch before an A's game when they were in Texas. So they were playing in Texas. It was like the first game of the season. It was opening day. And he went out and threw a first pitch. And my man threw a strike. I want to say he's in his 70s. But not only did he throw a strike, he threw an 84.
Oh, jeez.
It's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like,
Some
but
dudes are just built differently too. Jeez.
but
Yeah.
you talk about a guy who, Quinn, you brought up throwing inside.
Mm-hmm.
Nolan Ryan taught pitchers for the foreseeable future how to throw inside and keep people uncomfortable. If he hit you, he didn't give a shit. He just strike out the next guy. And I'll tell you what, his 3,000 strikeout victim, I think it was his 3,000. It was one of those milestones, was Ricky.
Yeah.
I was watching the game.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was like, you're going to be kidding me. And talk about a guy who doesn't strike out much.
Wow, that's fitting then.
Mm-hmm.
Make it extra memorable.
Yeah. Nolan was a beast.
And 7 no-hitters. Does anyone have more no-hitters than Nolan Ryan?
Not that I know of.
Maybe back in the day in the dead ball era, not the area, era. Let's see. So he ended up
Nolan Ryan, yeah.
So I think Ricky may have been his 5,000th strikeout because he has 5,714.
Damn.
That's a lot of strikeouts.
That's never going to be touched. That goes into the vault as the stolen base record. Cal Ripken streak. Nolan Ryan strikeouts. Never to be touched again. I mean, to break those records, it would be something. Something would have to change. The
Not with
strike
the way
zone
the
would.
nerds are hijacking the game. They won't ever let a pitcher or any of these players get to that level.
Yeah, welcome to the business side, bro.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what. I bet you half those players who played back then for peanuts would love to pitch 2 or 3 innings and get their family set up for life, being paid what they're being paid now.
Oh, true.
It's tough. It is.
Yeah.
Because it is a business. And we are the consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think one of the reasons the Dodgers fumbled this game is because it was a bullpen game.
Right.
Yeah.
So fuck that, stupid Dodgers.
This was not a pitcher's duel. Out of the gate. Out of the gate. This was not a pitcher's duel. But
Game 5 probables. Garrett Cole, he of the punchable face, Garrett Cole, is going for the Yankees in Game 5.
you know what's funny? I felt Garrett Cole on the Pirates. Not very punchable.
Hmm.
Garrett Cole on the Astros. A shitheel. Garrett Cole on the Yankees. Yeah, indifferent.
It's the lack of beard.
No.
The lack of beard.
No, it's who he's playing for. Because you know what? I feel the same damn way when he's playing for Astros. And I'll tell you what. So we talked about Pedroia, and I avoided bringing up Altuve because I will tell you what, Altuve is, if you let Pedroia play a little bit longer, Altuve's there. If it wasn't for the 2017 World Series, the trash throws, don't take off my shirt. I don't know if he was a cheater or not. But that whole thing, Altuve would be one of my favorite players on a team that I hate.
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, how can you not be? I mean, he was another second baseman. I think he was, what, 5'5"?
Yeah.
MVP.
Might be even shorter than Pedroia.
Oh, yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Just a ball player. A gritty ball player. And I don't think the Astros have the success that they've had over the years without him.
He's been the common link throughout all the different kind of little roster tweaks. He's been the guy that's been there the whole time.
Yep.
He's a spark plug.
Yep.
I think by the time that so next week, do we do this Tuesday? I think there's something going on Tuesday next week.
Oh,
I
right.
don't remember what it is. Huh. Something important happening next Tuesday.
Big election going on.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Some of us already voted, though.
Oh, see, I'm a traditionalist. Like, I think 2020 I did mail-in voting just because, COVID. But there's something about the rush you get just going to the ballot box on the day of.
I'm a walk-in kind of guy.
Yeah.
Well, I did it. I just did early.
They're going like to City Hall and doing it.
Yeah, because I moved, and I don't think with my forwarding address that they updated my the precinct I was in, so I just went in and did that.
So I don't know if we'll. I kind of want to watch the election
Yeah.
as we do this. So maybe we pick. Um, I know, right? I'm throwing a wrench in our schedules, but maybe if we can pick another evening next week uh,
Hmm.
to do this, we should do this. But at this point, I think
Oh,
we have exhausted part of our topic. I think this was definitely an interesting conversation. Certainly not the um, the way that I think we anticipated it going, but I appreciate it, and
mm,
I think it was good.
yep.
So I still got some more bolts in my holster for some of my unique characters of the game. And I mean, think about the guys that we didn't talk about yet, right?
Mm.
So the Bill Lees, the
Yeah.
guys who are still, he's still peeding around in the banana ball
Mhm.
circuit. Um, I mean, think about banana ball. All the
Oh
former
yeah.
MLB players that go back and play characters of the game, right?
Mm.
Um, the Mark Fidrich, who's a local guy here,
Yeah.
Mm.
that we could talk about. So there's plenty more to cover that used to wear Red Sox uniforms
Yep.
or local guys that we could just sit here and Louis Tion,
Oh yes.
you know,
Yep.
and just his impact post his playing
Mm.
career, being the guy who sits by the sausages and signs every ball that
Yep.
anybody ever like looks at him funny with. Um,
Yeah, my dad got the underside of the visor of one of
yeah,
his hats signed by Louis. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, just a good dude, right?
Yeah.
So I think we can revisit this again. So expect the part two of interesting players, and I don't suspect it going any different than this.
Yeah. It'll be a wide ranging conversation.
Yeah, yeah, which I appreciate. So, folks, till sometime next week.
Always a pleasure.
Hey, listen, if it starts going crooked, call up Mr. Taylor. He'll win fair play.